I think it's going.
I think we're
Welcome
recording.
back to another edition of the Healthy Rebellion Radio.
Yep.
Wife, what's going on?
Oh gosh, just hope everybody's having a very wonderful and safe holiday week.
Indeed.
And we're super pumped because just coming up here in a few weeks, we're doing our very first 30-day Rebel Reset and 7-day carb test inside the Healthy Rebellion.
What more could you ask for?
I know. So we've got all kinds of stuff planned. And I know we mentioned this in the previous episode, but just want to remind folks that if you are curious about the Healthy Rebellion community and you're not yet a member, this is really the perfect time to join, because we're going to be doing a community-wide 30-day reset for those who want to, and some folks are already doing keto and have set macros, or maybe you're carnivore, but there's the sleep, movement, community pieces of the reset that we'll be touching on as well. So if you want to join and have community support and Q&As and all kinds of fun stuff that we've got planned, then join us.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the Healthy Rebellion. We generate a lot of content in there, but these transformations are really valuable for folks, regardless of a body composition or a performance, or even like you said, kind of a sleep or other lifestyle type stuff.
And just that support, right? A lot of times people make a big plan to do something different in the new year, and they are going it alone. And it's a lot harder to go it alone frequently for most people than to have a supportive community that's got your back.
Generally, the greatest determinant of whether or not somebody succeeds in change is the social support that they have, for sure. So that kickoff is happening January 10th. So make sure to join the Healthy Rebellion before then if you want to get in on this.
And that's at join.thehealthyrebellion.com. Rob, what do you got for us what do you have for us? What you got for us today on the news piece?
You were channeling a little bit of Beastie Boys for a minute. So I almost hesitated to pull this one up because we beat on these kind of retrospective epidemiological studies all the time. And then it's like, oh, we have one that supports our position and whatever. So we'll go with the confirmation bias, however it plays out. But it appeared in the Annals of Internal Medicine, Red and Processed Meat Consumption and Risk for All-Cause Mortality and Cardiometabolic Outcomes, a systematic review and meta-analysis of cohort studies. It was a massive paper, and it was just published November, or it's due out. No, it was published November 19th, 2019. So pretty darn new paper, and it created a pretty good stir. This one, and then some of the rebuttal around the Eat Lancet piece, which was basically it was making the case that pulling meat out of the diet was going to cause people to overeat, leave them nutrient deficient. Like we've had a few modest wins on this stuff. At least I feel like some more, and again, it's so funny because everybody's just fucking biased. So it's like, well, it supports our position, so it's got to be right.
Your scientists aren't. My scientists are right. Your scientists are wrong.
This is a whole funny like.
It's like what happened to the scientific method and having like, I don't know. It just feels like everybody has their scientists on their team, and it's just this ongoing battle. Yeah,
it's funny. Like I'm having this like existential crisis here in front of everybody. The MO right now is to just fucking barrel forward. This is the way it is. This is what the data proves, and it's always there's some element of interpretation, and there's limitations. No, nothing's perfect. But then at the same time, if I don't present this with absolute certitude, the way to win this stuff is to just present it with certitude. This is the fucking way it is, And then if you try to maintain some degree of like scientific grounding, that it's like, no, we don't know it all. And this is interesting, but what could some of the limitations be? Then it's like, well, they're not really too sure. So I'm honestly like, I'm having a moment here. But anyway, so it was a great paper. We'll post it in the show notes. It is open access, but the conclusion out of the whole thing, the magnitude of association between red and processed meat consumption and all-cause mortality and adverse cardiometabolic outcomes is very small, and the evidence is of low certainty. So they're saying that to the degree that there might be something here, the effect is tiny. And even then, this is an artifact of having shitty base material to pull from, which is basically these food frequency questionnaires and you know, recollections, to say nothing of the statistical torturing that occurs to get one of these effects. This is nothing on par with like looking at the epidemiology of smoking, or even I've been sharing some stuff with you on like sunlight exposure, and I'll share this at some point later, but there was a study that looked at sun exposure in smokers versus non-smokers, and the sunlight exposure was so beneficial, it was as if the smokers were not smokers. They were as healthy as
so if you're going to
non-smokers.
smoke, lay out in the sun.
Yeah. Oddly enough, or maybe smoke while in the sun, but the effect there was profound. It wasn't nominal. You didn't need a bunch of statistical torturing to be able to get this kind of agenda. So, yeah, but you know, it's funny. So within this like vegan battle and everything that's kind of going on, this front that comes out of things like game changers and stuff like that, it's just this wall of certitude. And so I've actually been trying to counter that in some ways with less certitude, you know, being more conservative and like, well, here's the limitations. And this would be something interesting just for the listeners. Give us some feedback on that, because I don't ever want to be in an echo chamber. I don't ever want to be so beholden to a particular, you know,
position.
line of position,
because
that
information changes and you get new data and you get new information.
Right.
So you have to be able to, and that's where
no,
this,
you don't
like,
have to.
Well,
you can just pick a worldview and just fucking steamroll it. That's kind of what I'm saying. And what's interesting about this is the people that are kind of winning, at least in the short term under the current circumstances like this, it's just certitude. Everything is known. Like, you know, all this shit's all buttoned up. Do I have everything plugged in that needs to be plugged in? Yes, I do. Okay, looks good. Sorry, I looked down at our pile of cords and there was something that wasn't plugged in. But
dangler.
It's fine. Yeah, we had a dangling gerund. So anyway, totally off topic there, but it's interesting.
It seems like there should be some gold standard of scientific study. Like how does the average person make sense of this? Because there's, you know, you've talked about differences between epidemiological studies and randomized control trials and all these different types of studies. The average person doesn't know the difference between them and which one is more valuable than another. And especially when you have vegans with touting their, you know, epidemiological studies as being the gold standard, when other people in science don't believe that's the gold standard. Like, how do we move forward? Like, what's the answer in science? Like, shouldn't there be some, like, we did this study and 5 other teams replicated it, so this is, you know, as far as we know with the information we have and what we were studying, this is good to go, gold stamp. You know, like how could we move forward?
I mean, there have been these things called Cochrane reviews where they the Cochrane group gets together and they kind of grab everything that's available, and it gets shifted or sifted or triaged based off the type of research. So, like if it's a randomized clinical intervention, you know, double-blinded, that's kind of like gold standard stuff, and it gets weighted heavier than even things like this paper, which are more retrospective, epidemiological based type research. But there was recently some suggestion that the Cochrane process is maybe not as integrated as what we would like, that there may be some kind of issues there. I think at a minimum, when we look at this stuff, you know, we can use possibly like this ancestral health model or like a general kind of worldview. Like the vegans kind of look at blue zones. The more ancestral health folks look more at like Catawans and Okinawans, and you know, go forward from there. And then we have these review papers, epidemiological in nature. Then we start getting into animal trials and then human trials. And so there is a way to kind of order and rank this stuff, you know, like when there's a claim that, like there's this current thing going around, James Wilkes's pushing the notion that meat eating causes
erectile
dysfunction. And this is genius marketing on the part of like the game changer people. I don't know how we got out on this diversion, but we're here. So
it is genius because I feel, well, I could be wrong, but it seems like women gravitate towards plant-based more than men. I don't know, but then
in the messaging,
pulling out the erectile dysfunction piece, like any guy that is, no, I'm not, I'll definitely add more veggies, but I'm going to keep my meat. But as soon as a guy hears erectile dysfunction, then it's like plant-based, here I go.
And the study that is being cited, or the process that is being cited on that, and I'll do a full breakdown on it, is bullshit. Like, it is just the claims around that vascular epithelial function is so taken out of context, but it is fucking genius the way that they stacked all this stuff up, and historically the more vegan based agenda has been more kind of a caregiver, a more feminine kind of angle, but as part of the game changers, they're talking about gladiators are fucking badasses, so of course you would eat like a gladiator, which that was all taken out of context. And then any guy that is not concerned about his penis not working, maybe close enough to death that it doesn't really matter at that point, and so that's a beautiful way to sow some concern around this. And so I will circle back around and touch on that. But
maybe we can make that a news topic.
We could do that, the news topic next time. But I will also tackle that one in the lab, because I want to really thoroughly detail what are they claiming. Here's the process they used, and then let's look at all this other stuff in some context. So I just diverted us into like a whole podcast worth of goofiness. But again, I would request of you folks, you guys are following us, you're supporting us. What is a reasonable position to take on all this? Like, I get that if I just presented this like iron wall of certitude, we might actually be better. But in my experience, having had multiple mentors pull this card and kind of go to crazy land and cease to be able to learn and adapt, on the one hand, you could make the case that it's like, well, for the movement, you kind of want this. But then at the same time, as soon as you adopt that position, your learning and evolution stops. You've basically written who you are and what you're about into a stone tablet, and that's it. You are a fossil at that point. So what's the trade-off there with, trying to move an agenda forward that I think is reasonable? But even then, this is where I'm hesitating. It's like, well, it's our opinion on it. So I don't know. Like, I'm so betwixt and betweened about that, other than I'm pretty sure that evolution, economics, and thermodynamics are going to win the day. Like, the fact that a plane flies does not violate the laws of physics. It operates within the laws of physics. It is not defying gravity. It's working within the parameters of gravity using aerodynamics, and all of this stuff kind of links back together, and the energy inputs, the economics, the evolutionary medical or species appropriate diet kind of perspective, all of that matters. So maybe I do need to be a little bit more certain about that. But anyway, I'll shut up. We'll keep going.
Let's do
We really are probably down to 6 listeners at this point.
Let's do our review t-shirt winner announcement. We've got a review from Elmas. Healthy guts of the world unite. No dietary agenda. No making you feel guilty about eating mistakes. Just a lot of knowledge of a very complicated topic, nutrition, explained in a way everyone can understand. I thank you. My healthy gut thanks you.
And our healthy guts say thank you to you.
Yeah, and no dietary agenda. See that?
Maybe. Well, okay.
See?
Okay.
She appreciates that.
Well.
Elmas, thank you for your review. We'd love to send you a Healthy Rebellion Radio t-shirt. So shoot us an email over to hello@robwolf.com with your t-shirt size and your mailing address, and we'll get that shipped off.
Sweet.
Yeah. All right. This episode of the Healthy Rebellion Radio is sponsored by Perfect Keto. Fuel your low-carb lifestyle with Perfect Keto's line of snacks and supplements. You can use their ketones or MCT oil powder to energize for a workout, a work session, or whatever life throws your way. Exogenous ketones notoriously taste awful, but Perfect Keto comes in delicious chocolate sea salt and peaches and cream flavors that go in almost any beverage and taste great. Coffee, you can even put it up in just plain water. Now, Rob, exogenous ketones can be super powerful in certain situations. When do you think someone might want to use them?
Yeah, when they're oftentimes touted as a weight loss aid. And I'm not, to the degree that I'm comfortable with that, are studies that look mainly at a mixed food diet that is calorically balanced, but the fat source in one of the arms of this was mainly MCT oil, and it produced noticeable, measurable degree of ketosis. And what happened is that subsequent meals, folks spontaneously reduced calorie intake. So I think that there's some potential efficacy around that notion, that so long as we're paying attention to what we're eating and we use this to maybe offset some other, caloric intake, then it may, that state of ketosis that comes about from MCT, possibly also the beta hydroxybutyrate salts, may stave off hunger later, and so we spontaneously reduce food intake. But I like to be careful with that. Like, some folks in the industry have been very fast and loose with the claims that they make around that. This is one of the reasons why I like Perfect Keto. They've actually had their feet on the ground and are reasonable in the way that they tackle this.
It's also great for folks that have had any kind of brain,
like the traumatic brain injury deal. Yeah. And this is a controversial topic. It hasn't been well researched, but I could make the case that where all of these types of products should absolutely shine. Like, every youth sports first aid kit should have multiple packets of some sort of a ketone ester, a ketone salt, an MCT ketone salt combo or something like that. And a kid gets their bell rung and they should be on some sort of a protocol like that. Now, again, we don't have research to support this. I think that there is some work underway to show the potential efficacy there, but just mechanistically, it makes a lot of sense for helping to mitigate that kind of post-concussion syndrome. So that's one place that it's kind of like, man, this stuff could really shine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. You guys can go to perfectketo.com/rebellion10 and use code rebellion10 for $10 off orders of $40 or more. And now, Robbie, we've got our questions for the week.
Robbie, I love you.
Robbie. Okay. Paleo MREs. Matt says, I've been in the military for about 5 years now. I joined later in life and after I was introduced to paleo, keto, and low carb. Let me tell you, the DoD approach to nutrition is pretty bad. Outside of some interesting studies they are pursuing, they still stick to the standard info where you're used to hearing of low fat, high carb, chocolate milk for recovery, Gatorade to rehydrate. We were force-fed Gatorade at the last school I went to in San Antonio. I would put Element in my water and a tiny bit of Gatorade powder just to change the water's color. Nice. With the ever-increasing number of product lines that exist that cater to paleo, low-carb, real food crowd, could there ever come a time when a paleo MRE product could be developed that would be low cost enough to compete for a government contract with the trash that's out there now? MREs are full of sugar and food with a long shelf life that have some serious GI consequences that, let's just say, take an individual from one extreme to the other when it comes to bathroom utilization. The beverage powders are just plain Gatorade. The fat sources are usually peanuts. The protein is nearly non-existent, and the energy bars are incredibly high glycemic. About an hour after consuming one, most people just want to put a diaper on and take a long nap. I know there are several paleo MREs available commercially, but in my experience, they don't address the caloric needs of a soldier in the field and consist primarily of jerky, nuts, and dried food. When you look at a cost-to-calorie ratio, they don't really pan out too well.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, where processed carbs and sugar and high fructose corn syrup shine
Shelf life
is massive shelf life products. Something that could go from below freezing to 140 degrees because it's in a shipping container and back and forth, and then you can still rip it open and it's essentially edible. That's a tough one to compete with. Ages ago, we tried developing some stuff around this. And I mean, this is just a story where and it stinks because folks generally in the military don't get paid a ton of money. And so, personally supplementing what your kit is probably the most effective way to go about doing this. So what people will do, they'll, like he alluded to, these MREs will have like a thing of peanut butter and then like a cake and some other things, and people will pull out the peanut butter. They basically will swap out as much as they can. So they supplement the base MRE, and they will trade other people like, hey, I'll give you the cake for your peanut butter and stuff like that. And so your buddy's going to keel over from diabetes and poop himself, but you may be okay. But those are kind of the options out there. The interesting thing is, at some point, the government's gonna have to figure out that it's super expensive to feed people poorly, and it's more expensive to feed them poorly than not. Well. But this is another one of these things. We've talked about this with like the risk assessment program. Most companies these days, this gets out in the weeds a little bit, but one of the challenges of getting a company to invest in its workforce is that the workforce is generally a very mobile. People on average stay at a job like less than 4 years now. So employers are frequently engaging in this game of hot potato, where they just hope that the person has a catastrophic event when they're somewhere else, And so there's the fact that the people aren't there for 30 years and getting like the golden watch retirement handshake. There's not the impetus to invest in folks. And so even within the military, generally people are not career military. People that are career military tend to take their health more seriously and do different things, And so it's a really tough deal. But at some point, there's probably going to be a breakdown in just they're finding it difficult to even field an adequate force because of how deconditioned and metabolically broken people are. So I don't know, at some point, the cost of doing this poorly is going to be such that it will be reasonable to at least do it better. But in the interim, folks just need to figure out ways of supplementing the kit that they have. Yeah.
Got it. All right. Our next question is around anxiety and college student food. Cole says, hey, Rob and Nikki, recently I've been struggling with stress and anxiety. Started about 4 months ago when I was preparing and being interviewed for a job which was very stressful. A random thought ended up becoming an unwanted, intrusive thought, which caused lots of debilitating distress, stress, and anxiety. I ended up losing about 10 pounds unintentionally, begun getting the chills and shivering in the mornings, lost my appetite, and I'm still struggling with the chills and shivers in the morning, but my anxiety and stress levels have dropped. My mind has also gotten more clear. I'm not going to lie, during the time this happened, I was not eating too well. About 3 years ago, I lost 100 pounds with a non-paleo, low-carb approach that was clean-ish. I've maintained it since then. My 21st birthday was around this time, and I did drink quite a bit, but I have limited usage to once a week. I like paleo. I cleaned up my diet quite a bit, and I feel this has made a difference. Should I stick with paleo, go low carb, or even keto? Thank you for your help, and please let me know what you think.
What's your thought on this?
It's kind of hard to know exactly what his question is. He's wanting to know like what dietary approach he should go. Sounds like he had some stress that has resolved for the most part.
Yeah.
The chills and shivers, which sounds like he still has that. I'm not quite sure what that
could
be contributing to that.
I would definitely go get checked out by a doc, just like a general physical to kind of get a
that doesn't
get a baseline.
Seem normal.
That's concerning. And then above and beyond that, ticking the box of like, okay, you don't have something life-threatening going on here. It's really hard when we get stressed. Usually shitty eating is the time expedient thing to do, without a doubt. Like we feel that like the last couple of months, moving, homeschooling, all this stuff, but it's also the time that you have to double down. You have to make that the priority, because it's an additive stress, and eating really poorly. Like if you want to break someone, that's like that, and then poor sleep. And usually the poor sleep goes hand in hand with all this stuff. So For Cole, I don't know if you should go paleo or low carb or keto. I would pick whichever one of those you feel like is the easiest one for you to do. If you were eating really poorly and now, any movement in a good direction is probably going to be favorable. I would probably throw in some fish oil because there's some great research that suggests that can be helpful. Maybe like 2 to 3 grams of EPA, DHA a day.
He doesn't say, it's not, he lost 100 pounds. So I don't know if he's at his ideal body weight currently, but if that's the case, focus on nutrient density and do the best that you can with, I'm assuming you're eating at a college cafeteria, or I don't know if you live off campus or what your kind of cooking kitchen situation looks like. But I think you can only win if you focus on like quality foods, nutrient density.
Yep, absolutely. And again, that could be paleo, that could be low carb, that could be Mediterranean. Like there's a lot of ways to do that, but avoiding processed food, maybe stacking the deck in your favor, putting more calories earlier in the day, fewer calories later in the day. And it's tough being in school. Like if you can get to bed earlier and deal with that circadian rhythm, get out in the sun.
Get sun on your body and in your eyes.
If you can study outside at all, those things will be big wins. And I would definitely pick up a copy of Emily Fletcher's book, Stress Less, Achieve More. And I would religiously do that twice a day. It's 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon. But man, had I not been doing that the last 6 months, I'm already a dick. Like Nikki will fully attest to that. But it's we've been under more stress moving, homeschooling, no social network, relaunching, like completely changing our whole business model, putting one podcast to bed, opening up a new one, and that meditation has been like when I do it now, like when I'm actually, sometimes it's kind of hard. I'm like, I really wish I could just go sit down and start working or whatever. But I sit down and I start doing it. I'm like, I don't want to do anything else. Like I just want to stay here and do this all day. But then about 15 minutes of it, it's kind of funny. Just internal clock. It's like a timer goes off. I look at the clock. I'm right at like 15 to 20 minutes. And it is a life changer. I can't say game changer because that term is befouled now. It is dirty and befouled, but it is a life changer. So Cole, find the dietary approach that you can manage. Anything is going to be better than total off the rails hookers and cocaine.
Go to the medical center on campus and see what's going on with your chills.
Get a basic physical just to tick the box on that. Address your sleep hygiene, circadian biology, and then get that book.
And then let us know.
Yeah, definitely
afterwards. Report back. Yeah. Okay. Anil has a question on ketogenic diet after having had an attack of pancreatitis. I have implemented the PKD diet, but have been struggling with the 2-to-1 animal fat to protein ratio. Prior to this, I was on the classic keto diet and also struggled with animal fats, fatty cuts of meat, bone marrow, for example, but never had a problem with avocados, nuts, or raw milk and fatty cheese. I've had an attack of pancreatitis 4 years ago, which also became diabetic, but reversed all of that naturally via the keto diet, but I still struggle with gut issues. Could this be linked to the attack of pancreatitis? If so, why just animal fats and not other fats? I also did my fecal elastase test, fat in the stools, etc., which were normal. Also, a CT scan of the pancreas did not show any abnormality. So what gives?
Man, we've both gallbladder issues and pancreatitis. We've seen it post gluten exposure. Like this is a big deal. So I would be curious, like, was there any potential, like folks will motor along, they're eating paleo or keto or whatever, and then they go to, we had a client that he Straz, like, he went to a party and he's like, oh, fuck you guys. And he ate a thing of bread and had his appendix went bananas and he had to have it taken out, and we've seen that a lot. And it kind of begs the question, like, or are you setting people up for frailty on that? And it's like, I don't know, like their gut heals and then you get a more profound gut response with this. And so what's the cost benefit story there? I don't know. High fat, a couple of thoughts on this. So what Anil is referring to, the PKD, is the Paleo Ketogenic diet, which the Paleo Medicina folks in Hungary have produced, and they have some really impressive results in some different areas. They have some approaches like with type 1 diabetes that make the folks in the type 1 grit community absolutely crazy. They don't agree with it, and they're not big fans. I think that they're maybe a little bit out of their element on that specifically. And the interesting thing is the paleo ketogenic diet, the way that they set it up, it's a low protein, very high fat diet. And it works great for some people. It's absolutely amazing. It's pretty much carnivore for the most part. And then they will introduce some amounts of plant material based off your tolerance and whatnot. But depending on what you have going on, a high protein, low carb approach like the Bernstein approach, like Ketogains, like what we recommend in the Keto Masterclass, is oftentimes a very viable option. You know, if we're not specifically driving the boat to generate ketones, if we just want to feel good or have normal blood sugar levels, like that's largely where I've settled out. I'm eating significant amounts of protein. I keep carbs pretty modest, and then the fat isn't sky high, and my digestion is better, and I poop better, and you know, all the rest of that stuff. So I would look at potentially dropping the fat, protein. Increasing the protein, finding sources that work for you, and also, like always with this stuff, if you tolerate carbs or certain types of carbs, then, you know, why are you specifically omitting them? I stick in some berries. I stick in a little bit of squash. Like I drop in a little bit, but I've just kind of noticed that 20 grams of effective carbohydrate at a meal is kind of where I kind of top out with still feeling good. And I suspect I'm probably still at least somewhat ketotic, and I don't do that every meal, but like if I'm going to do some harder training, I will do more of that throughout the day. But there are a lot of ways that we could tweak this instead of just being like totally beholden to this 2-to-1, you know, protein to fat ratio. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, it's time for our Healthy Rebellion Radio Trivia Question of the Week. It's time. My Bruce Buffer. Let's see. Our episode sponsor, Perfect Keto, is giving a container of Robb's favorite sea salt caramel MCT oil powder to 3 lucky winners selected at random who answer the following question correctly. And as always, we're going to tell you the answer to the question. Robb, what would you say is currently your weakest position in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
What do you think?
It's been so long since we.
It's been 5 months that we have hardly trained.
And I'm weak everywhere relative to you, so it's kind of hard for me to.
Where do you have the most success with me? Well, okay, we won't drag this out. Open guard bottom is still my weakest position. Okay. Yeah.
See, and passing open guard is still not great for me, so right. I wouldn't have said that was.
Well, and both open guard top and bottom are the hardest positions in jiu-jitsu because it's kind of the least connectivity and the most variables that you can deal with, and also the way that a lot of people tackle open guard, particularly from the bottom, they're like playing too much jiu-jitsu, and so it's a whole other topic. But yes, the trivia question answer is open guard bottom.
Open guard bottom. Yep. Okay. So to play, go to robbwolf.com/trivia, enter your answer, and we will randomly select 3 people with the correct answer to win Perfect Keto's Sea Salt Caramel MCT Oil Powder. Now, the cutoff to answer this week's trivia and be eligible to win is January 2nd, 2020, and winners will be notified via email, and we'll also announce on the winners on Instagram as well. And this is open to residents of the U.S. only.
Sorry, rest of the world.
Yeah, sorry. Let's see. Our next question of the week is from Keto KJ, and he's wondering if he's metabolically flexible. Question. Low carb keto for 2 years. If I indulge in a high carb, high fat treat, I expect to feel horrible, but I don't. Does that mean I am metabolically flexible or still insulin resistant? So I had a fried pie with ice cream, a special place we stop in Georgia, and I eat meat heavy low carb, and I'm always surprised that I don't feel the discomfort most talk about. No bloat, no headache, no stomach ache. I kind of wish I did.
No, you don't, because it sucks. Yeah, I think that this is a pretty classic example of someone likely being metabolically flexible. The subjective element to this of not feeling terrible after an event is not 100% ironclad. Like if we did a little bit of blood sugar monitoring within the story and looked at some labs, we might see some stuff that we're like, oh, wow, like it could be a scenario in which you don't necessarily feel bad, but some super gnarly bad stuff is happening. But I would 95% likelihood say Keto KJ is likely like you, where he's got a lot, he or she it has a ton of latitude on this. I will throw out there that a lot of this can be youth. Youth.
Yeah, we don't know how old you are. But
Yeah. Like if you're 19, 24 years old, then it's like, yeah, we would, unless you've been eating like a train wreck all the way along, which a lot of people unfortunately do, then we would really expect this. And you let 3 to 5 years go by, high stress job, have some kids, disordered sleep, and that stuff can change on a dime. So this is where using both the subjective and objective measures, like how do you look, how do you feel, how do you perform, what's your cognition like after a meal, what's your digestion like, and all that stuff. But if you're motoring along and you're doing pretty good, then kick your heels up, have some fun where you can, but just keep some eyes open that when you get old and use,
pay attention. Does it make you crave these types of foods more after, or are you able to have one and you're good and you go back to eating, your low carb keto without any cravings? Because for some people, maybe they don't feel bad, but it triggers like
the feed forward
mechanism of wanting to eat more and more sugary yet tasty treats. Let's see. Our last question this week is from Shannon. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this. How do you say that?
Genistein?
Genistein soy. My name is Shannon, and I have one of your books, Wanting to Buy More, and love your podcast. Such great info. Anyways, I got an email from Green Med Info newsletter, and one of the articles was talking about the health benefits of a nutrient found in soy to help with bone density. Everything I have read and understood about soy is not good. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this article because I assume people, women especially, will be running to the store to buy this to, quote, increase bone density. I'd love to hear you go into this on one of your podcasts. Thank you for your time and keep up the good work.
Yeah, so Genistein is one of these soy isoflavones that are a xenoestrogen. They're basically a phytoestrogen. And so estrogen is really important in bone mineral density. So one of the things that can happen both in menopausal women or andropause men or men that maybe are on testosterone replacement therapy, but they're using like an aromatase inhibitor to keep estrogen from getting too high, they can actually push it too low and fracture rates can dramatically increase. So you can lose bone mineral density on that. To a mild degree, what's happening in a scenario like this is that the genistein can act as an estrogen. It is effectively a form of phytoestrogen, and it can have that estrogenic effect. I think that there are other ways around this that one can employ to work around this. High protein diet, resistance training, proper ADK levels on supplementation. Those are all very effective, but this is something where, let's say we have a peri or postmenopausal woman and they might consider some type of like bioidentical hormone replacement to get this estrogen effect. And I think that in that scenario, you're getting a more targeted dose. It's more easily monitored, and also there are some concerns around, say, like thyroid being antagonized from soy products and whatnot. So there are some other ways around that, but at the end of the day, this is one of those interesting things where I would generally characterize soy as a potentially really problematic food But there are circumstances in which the consumption of soy may offer some benefit in some like PCOS scenarios and other scenarios where estrogen levels are actually too high, where women are estrogen dominant. Consumption of things like these soy isoflavones mitigate the effects of high estrogen levels because they're a competitive inhibitor. They they bond to the estrogen receptor, but they bond to it less tightly and cause less activation than estrogen itself, estradiol and whatnot. So it both can provide some effect if you have no or low estrogen, but it can also blunt the effect of estrogen at high levels. And this is, again, where shit is kind of nuanced, and it's really situationally specific as to what's going on. Now, with women that are estrogen dominant, usually we've got some form of insulin resistance that is a big driver in that direction, and mitigating the insulin resistance will largely address the estrogen dominance that we see out of like that PCOS kind of scenario. So, yeah.
Okay.
So it could be good. It kind of is, and this is where, you know, I'm a fan of some testing. Like, people go kind of crazy, but establishing a baseline of like androgens, thyroid, that makes a ton of sense. Doing some sort of an LPIR score, lipoprotein insulin resistance score, just to have a benchmark, and then you can at least when you update it, then if something has gone totally sideways, or if you look, feel, perform worse, then we can at least look at where you were previously and then say, well, those look good. Now we update it, and then we see something that goes sideways. Because again, even within the hormone levels, I've talked to docs that, like, there are guys that motor along great at a total testosterone of like 200, 300, and they do well. And then there's other guys that need to be at like 1100, 1200, or they feel horrible. If they're running at like 6 or 7 or 800, they feel much, much less well. So, yeah. Interesting.
All right. That was our final question for the week. Remember to check out Perfect Keto, the sponsor of today's episode. As a reminder, you can go to perfectketo.com/rebellion10 and use code rebellion10 for $10 off orders of $40 or more. And we'd ask you to share this episode. If something in this show helped you, please share this episode with your friends. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you go for your podcast experience. And
the reviews make a huge difference in other folks just kicking the tires on it and giving it a shot.
Show. Yep. And lastly, remember, now is the time to join us in the Healthy Rebellion. So go to join.thehealthyrebellion.com and you'll be right in time to participate in our January Rebel Reset and 7-Day Carb Test.
Hope to see you there.
All right, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.